I've seen again and again the beauty that unfolds in therapy sessions when we allow our own inner wisdom to guide the process. And there's sort of that mirror between what happens in therapy sessions and what happens in our life as well. And if anything, 90% of what happens in a session is guided by that felt sense. Maybe it's a pull towards asking a question, an image, or even just being in silence. It's really the art of working with energy, with attention and intention towards healing and transformation. Calling myself a transpersonal psychotherapist is sort of like calling myself a modern witch. I really see quite a number of parallels here. When I'm trusting the unfolding of the session, I'm not only trusting my own intuition, but more so I am trusting the inner wisdom of the client. The deeper part within each and every client already knows how to move towards wholeness, how to move towards healing, when given the right space, right attunement, and the right safety. Both a witch and a transpersonal psychotherapist, we have an attunement to the unseen. Just like how a witch listens to the wind, the moon, the air, and the changes in the atmosphere, a transpersonal psychotherapist also attune to what is unsaid. We listen to the subtle shifts in the body language, the energy that is felt underneath a story that a client tells us. A witch moves between the physical and the spiritual world. For a transpersonal psychotherapist, we don't just work with the conscious mind, we move between the conscious and the unconscious. Both worlds are real and both worlds need a translator, and we are essentially that translator. Hey chillers, welcome back to episode 5 of The Original Magic. In today's episode, let's talk about the magic of therapy. And yes, there is magic in therapy. When I talk about this magic, it's not that kind of cinematic, instantaneous breakthroughs, right? But it is a sacred, gradual, slow process of unfolding when two souls actually come together to meet in truth, in honesty. And that is the kind of magic that I want to talk about today. Okay, and it could be the moment when a client's body soften, finally release a certain emotion. All of these invisible shifts that no one sees, but everyone can feel it. That is the kind of magic that I want to talk about in today's episode. And it is that kind of thing that I didn't used to believe as well. Okay, I didn't used to believe in magic. I didn't used to believe in energy and that sort of things. And when we don't trust this sort of things, essentially what we are saying is that we don't trust ourselves. And it's true, I used to be someone that didn't trust myself. I trusted evidence, proof, logic, and I trusted the seen over the unseen. And even when I had a feeling about something, when I had a strong feeling about something, I would push it aside until I had enough facts and logic to verify that feeling. And that's just how much I didn't trust my own intuition and magic. But in my years of work as a psychotherapist, I guess one of the greatest gifts that I've come to receive is reclaiming my inner magic and reclaiming that self-trust, which I hope to share in this video today, also in hopes to inspire you to reclaim your own trust, because I've seen again and again the beauty that unfolds in therapy sessions, the magic that unfolds in therapy sessions when we allow our own inner wisdom to guide the process. And there's sort of that mirror between what happens in therapy sessions and what happens in our life as well. But at the heart of my work is something deeply intuitive. It's a kind of attunement to the present moment that cannot really be scripted. And if anything, 90% of what happens in a session is guided by that felt sense. Maybe it's a pull towards asking a question, an image, or even just being in silence. All of this is guided by an inner wisdom that can't really be scripted. I don't even know how to describe this, okay? What never fails to amaze me is that how that exact moment turns out to be what the session needs or what the client needs the most. Of course, therapy is not a cookie cutter sort of treatment plan, but rather is a very deep attunement whereby you attune to what is needed in every second, every moment. So the deeper I journey into this field, the clearer this became. There is really magic here. Not magic in that fairy tale kind of sense, but I guess magic in a way whereby a modern witch would agree with is that kind of magic where it's really the art of working with energy, with attention and intention, okay, towards healing and transformation. And all of this helps to shape and guide the session. So I just want to clarify here that magic that I'm speaking about here is not about defying the laws of nature, but is partnering with it so consciously and so intentionally that change begins to feel natural. And what I mean by this is that, for instance, when a client finally releases an old emotion or an old emotional residual, it's not because I made that happen, right? It's because we created the right conditions for their own inner wisdom to rise, for their own inner magic to rise, which is something that is already naturally occurring, just that sometimes it's being blocked. It's being blocked by certain obstacles in certain maybe high pressure environments that kind of inner wisdom is not able to come up, right? So in therapy sessions, we create the right conditions for this inner wisdom to naturally arise. And then the shift just feels effortless. And then we call that magic, right? But that's actually just us finally allowing our natural rhythms to flow. So in that sense, calling myself a transpersonal psychotherapist is sort of like calling myself a modern witch. I really see quite a number of parallels here. To explain that, I first want to just share a little bit more about the history of witches. Where did this witch metaphor came from? I'm not sure if anybody has actually drawn these parallels before, but I just see there is a few parallels between being a witch and being a transpersonal psychotherapist. And maybe transpersonal psychotherapists are just like another name for modern witch. So I'm just going to share a little bit more about the history of modern witch, and let me just read out the history of a witch lineage, okay? So you guys can get a better understanding as well. Okay, so historically, the word witch actually carried both power and pain. And it once described healers, herbalists, midwives, women and men who live close to earth and the rhythms of nature. They work with herbs, they work with energy, they work with intuition, dreams, and the unseen. Okay, but as society actually shifted towards logic due to civilization and all of that, the deep intuitive wisdom became feared. Okay, and the witch hunts of history were not just about superstition. Okay, they were about silencing the feminine principle of knowing. The embodied, the intuitive, and the soulful is being feared. This inner wisdom is being feared because the society is actually transforming towards logic, order, and control. Okay, so those who dare to listen to the wind, to trust their dreams, right, to heal with touch and ritual, they were branded as dangerous. And yet, years and years, centuries later, that same lineage of wisdom still lives on in therapists and healers, artists, and even the sensitives, okay, who continue to bridge worlds that science alone cannot measure. So when I think of the witch, right, I don't think of spells or superstitions, okay? I think of remembering how to listen, remembering how to work with natural forces that is already happening around us, and working with the natural rhythms of life, and remembering that transformation doesn't come from power over, but power within. And that is the lineage that I personally feel connected to, is one that bridges ancient wisdom, intuition, and modern psychology. So now you've gotten a brief background of the history of witches. I would like to share the 3 parallels that I see between a witch and a transpersonal psychotherapist. So parallel number 1 is that both a witch and a transpersonal psychotherapist, we have an attunement to the unseen. Just like how a witch listens to the wind, the moon, the air, and the changes in the atmosphere, a transpersonal psychotherapist also attune to what is unsaid, what is unspoken in the therapy session. We listen to the subtle shifts in the body language, the energy that is felt underneath a story that a client tells us. We are sort of like a lie detector. We sense what is being unsaid, okay, rather than just what is being said as well. So essentially, we both work with the invisible threads that shapes the visible. So parallel number 2 is that I come to see that a witch and a transpersonal psychotherapist, they are both a holder of a safe space, a safe container. So in the same way, a witch, traditionally in history, they create a sacred circle, they create circles for rituals, transpersonal psychotherapists, they create a container, okay, in sessions, okay, and it is in this container, which I call the right conditions, where someone can show up fully as they are. They can bring all parts of themselves into a session and trust that something important will happen here. And number 3, we are both the bridge between worlds. Okay, we are essentially the bridge between worlds. And what do I mean by that? A witch moves between the physical and the spiritual world. For a transpersonal psychotherapist, we don't just work with the conscious mind. We move between the conscious and the unconscious. Both worlds are real and both worlds need a translator, and we are essentially that translator for a client to know what is beneath their conscious mind. Okay, and when I talk about the unconscious, or some people call it subconscious, it's really about underlying beliefs, our values, repressed emotions, our triggers, our values, and all of that. You know, we talk about the iceberg, right? It's the things that are 95% of our mind, which is subconscious in nature, that falls below our conscious awareness. And talking about this, right, I think that is also why I'm so drawn into hypnosis and hypnotherapy. I am currently in my advanced course now, completing my full diploma study, hopefully by the start of next year. But I'm so drawn into this because there's really something mystical about this. The way the conscious mind softens and then the subconscious mind actually steps forward. In many ways, right, hypnotherapy is a tool for us to also bridge the conscious and the unconscious. You know, when I think about the so-called witch wars, it's a time in history whereby the herbalists, the healers, the midwives, you know, they were being feared, okay? They were being feared not because they were dangerous, but because they had the courage to work with the unseen. They had the courage to work with what was invisible. Hypnosis, much like witchcrafts, you know, they carry their own shadow of misunderstanding. People might think that it's about trickery, it's manipulation, or something to be fearful of. In truth, it's simply another way to work with the natural laws of the mind, the natural rhythms of the body, and the deep intelligence of our soul. So for example, during a hypnosis, right, a client may actually access a forgotten memory that is already in his subconscious, okay? Or maybe they may experience a deep emotional release. This is not because they are controlled in the session. It's because their mind is finally relaxed enough for them to access their own truth, whatever truth that was being buried in their subconscious mind. So when we speak about working with the natural laws and rhythm of our body and our mind, right, it really isn't about forcing change, okay? It is about removing the obstacles, okay? For example, maybe in our day-to-day life, we feel so like anxious and our mind cannot relax, right? Because we have been programmed and conditioned that way. But through hypnosis, through hypnotherapy, we are actually working with the natural laws, okay, such that we relax the mind, okay? And when we relax the mind, you know, our own truth actually comes up to the surface. It's about removing obstacles, okay, in the moment that keeps us from accessing our most authentic self. It keeps us from accessing our truth. Speaking about this, right, there's also another layer to it. The natural fact of us human, right, is to be conditioned, correct? Since young, we are being conditioned to define what success looks like. We are conditioned to maybe go after a certain kind of lifestyle. But that also means that we have the innate capacity to be reconditioned. What I mean is like, you know, like how as part of humans, right, it's a natural fact that we can be conditioned. Okay, if not, then we wouldn't be conditioned in a way where we wake up at 7 a.m. to go to a 9 to 5 every day and then come home. You know, we actually are being programmed over the years. And that is a natural human fact. For instance, we also hold certain beliefs, deep-seated beliefs, right, which shape these conditionings. Usually they come from internalized messaging. But it's because as human, we have the capacity to be conditioned and to hold beliefs that such hypnosis and hypnotherapy can also work. So for instance, it honors like the mind suggestibility, right? Because our mind is just so suggestible, and we use that fact so that we leverage on that fact so that we can use it to guide ourselves to the things that we want to hold, we want to embody. Because every day, right, we are already naturally being exposed and we are already naturally being influenced already, okay, by our environments, by people around us, influenced by their words, their emotions, and the environments. And that is part of being human. It's about the conscious collaboration with the very natural laws in the universe that shape our inner world. And of course, then our outer reality. But I guess this whole hypnotherapy also is similar to, so-called the craft that witches do, right? They often get misunderstood, but in fact, it's nothing woo-woo, it's nothing dangerous or trickery or manipulation kind of thing, but it's really sort of just working with the unseen as well and bridging the conscious and the subconscious. So going back to transpersonal psychotherapy, I've learned to stop defining the work itself because I know that it's sacred most of the time and that there's no one fixed script in session. Everything is unfolding moment by moment. And I also trust that I will be attracting the right people at the right time who will be drawn to approaches like this. So I work with hundreds of souls to date, and I find that I no longer need any proof to tell myself that I am my modality. And I've come to see that throughout this journey, I've also learned to really trust the inner knowing and the inner guidance within me. So maybe the way I work will never fully fit into a label. Maybe the way I am, or maybe the way you are, may never fit to what society deems is acceptable or something that someone has already came up with. Okay, but it doesn't make it invalid. In fact, that is where your power is. Because maybe we're just not supposed to fit into a neat box, right? A neat label. Because the magic isn't in the label. It is in this moment. It is in this moment when we decide to trust the present moment to listen within. It is in the way we meet another being, fully present, and trusting that something alive and something magical is happening in the here and now each time we give our fullest attention. Each time we lean into the present moment and we surrender into that present moment. When we do that, magic unfolds in real time, which our mind and brain cannot comprehend. So when I'm trusting the unfolding of the session, I'm not only trusting my own intuition, but more so I am trusting the inner wisdom of the client, right? The more it becomes a client-led process. The deeper part within each and every client already knows how to move towards wholeness, how to move towards healing, when given the right space, right attunement, and the right safety. And so, in transpersonal psychotherapy, this trust becomes a collaboration. It's a dance between two consciousness. Maybe it's like one holding and one unfolding, both guided by something larger, wiser, unseen, but yet very, very profound and magical. And what happens, I find over time, is that the client will also begin to sense the same trust within them when they are seen without judgment, met with presence instead of pressure. Their own nervous system learns safety. Their inner voice grows louder. And their intuition, which is what I call their inner magic, strengthens. And that is how self-trust is built, when you're given the right conditions to just be yourself. And my role is to really facilitate that kind of condition. If you take nothing else from this episode, I really hope that you can take this with you. Your magic is worth trusting to. Before I close off today's session, here is a magical tip for you, okay? And I really encourage you to try this out every morning as a ritual. When you wake up, before you do anything, you can just place one hand on your heart and perhaps just whisper to yourself that I trust my knowing, I trust my magic. And notice how you carry yourself throughout the day when you start from this space. Try it and let me know if it works for you. Bye!
Wow!
Thanks for chilling in. If you enjoyed this podcast, don't forget to subscribe. You can also connect with me on Instagram at chillbynet or my website chillbynet.com to find out more about chill therapy services. Have a great day, and we'll chill together again very soon.